Speaking in percentages, Carla, what is a healthy profit margin in your opinion? And how does that translate to what you're seeing coming in the door when new clients come in?
Well, definitely context matters, and the size of your firm is going to have a lot to do with what profit you can hit. In the earlier stages, when it's maybe just you or just you and a paralegal or one other attorney, you probably can easily hit 30-40% profitability in your business. As you scale, what you'll find is it just takes more money to grow the business. There's more resources allocated back, and part of that profit is actually going back to accelerate the growth in your business. And so you will start to see a shift over time as you bring attorney number three, number four, and that profit might actually be reduced as you're investing in marketing and growth down to somewhere between 10 and 20%. And you might say, oh my God, that sucks. Why would I want to do that? Well, the point is that your higher number, which is your revenue, that is the percentage of, it's actually larger. So over time, that absolute number result 10, 20%, maybe up to 28% I've seen with, multiple millions of dollars size of firm, then it becomes a higher absolute number, which is what you want to be looking for, is comparing apples to apples, but also that percentage staying steady over time while you scale. We tend to aim between 10 and 15% while scaling because we know it takes a lot of those resources to be able to drive that growth, and invest in it in the right activities in the right areas for return on investment ROI is going to be key to make sure that revenue results are actually showing up for the investment that you're making on that growth. Often we see people are just spending money, not getting the growth, and now their profit is break even or 1%, like you mentioned. And that is just the worst case scenario because that means everything you're invested in did not work. So you need to try something else. It's time to shift after, you give it a good hard try. It's time to create some new strategies to figure out what could move the needle.
Yeah, and just to kind of put some example on those metrics. So if you're running a solo practice, 500,000 in revenue, and you're at a 50% margin, for example, which is entirely possible when you're a solo, you'd be making 250,000 off of that 500,000 in revenue. Now, if you were to scale that to 2 million and your margin were to go down to 20% in Carla's example, right? 20% of 2 million is 400,000. So your income would have gone up from 250 to 400, even though your margin had come down, which is what Carla was articulating with, that the top line revenue number is going to increase. And therefore that, even though it's a lower percentage, you're still resulting in a better result for you personally. I will say that in our experience, when clients come through the door, typically 3 million plus in revenue, typically they're running at 10% or less in margin, but we've been able to get them to in the 20 to 30% range. And the thing that I want our listeners to think about is, nobody talks about the tax effect, right? But the reality is that when you're earning, upwards of 500,000 to 600,000 a year, your tax, it's 50%. I mean, it's 37% federal. And then if you live in a state, like I live in New York, and New York's taking, 8, 9%. California, 8, 9%. Okay, maybe you live in Florida and for you it's less, right? But your tax hit, you got to figure you're going to be at 50%. So if your margin is 20%, well, 10% of that's going to the government. So your take home after tax is really only 10% of the business. So we always want to think about our after tax effect of the business. And if we can do a better job of unlocking that higher percentage, the higher profit margin, and Carla, she shared one of the three levers that you can use, which is to increase your prices. But it's not the only lever. So if we think about it, what goes into the actual profit we make is we have revenue that comes in the door. So the revenue is one piece of it. And then we have expenses that go out the door. And the margin is what's left, right? The profit's what's left. And I'm a profit first professional. So in just being fair to the profit first world, if you're familiar with it, it's profit minus expenses equals revenue, right? Like, or profit plus expenses, right? You want to take your profit first. So, but in that scenario, if profit is on one side of the equation and revenue and expenses are on the other side, then we have two different ways that we can fix this. We can increase revenue, which Carla said was, raise prices. That's one way to increase revenue. Another way is to bring in more clients, right? So there's two levers that you can pull on the revenue side. And then there's the expense side, we can decrease expenses. So decreasing expenses doesn't necessarily mean that we're cutting costs, that we're letting go of people. It could mean that we're finding more efficient ways to do more work with the same expenses we already have. So if we're increasing the top line, we're increasing the revenue because we're bringing on more clients. If we can find a way to do that without increasing the expenses, that's also going to move the needle on that percentage. So I think there's a huge opportunity for us to look at our business as a whole and say, can we do this more efficiently? Can we do this better? Can we have lower cost people doing things? Can we automate things with technology? Can we systemize and processize things? Can we focus on one specific area up within the practice area so that everything we're doing is pretty much cookie cutter and we're doing the same thing over and over again instead of every client being a totally new thing for us to figure out? So there's a lot of things that we can do within the realm of the operations of the business that can move the needle on the profitability, and really honing in on where the problem lies is probably the best work that Carla and I do with our clients.
Exactly. It's evaluating what are things that are blind spots or opportunities to streamline. And I think with new technology and disruption happening with AI, there's a ton of opportunity. And depending on what side of it you are on, I think there will always be a need for professionals and experts managing those tools. But how do you leverage some of that to ease your way through some work and cut maybe the amount of time it took to research something and go down to the thinking part, which is what you get paid for, the value that you bring to your clients on resolving their legal issues. And I think that is an aspect that, we're yet to unlock, and we'll see how people feel about it and start to adopt it. And that will really streamline and help facilitate, maybe automate some of those workflows and processes and chatbots doing some of the work, once you program it and take the time to do it, which it does take time. So let's be honest, right? There will be an investment up front to hopefully on the back end of that gain the efficiency, because you don't have to do it over and over again. You just have to invest that time at the beginning to get it up and running and set up correctly.